Hello everyone, this is Sam from Deep South Overlander. Do you wonder what an LX470 looks like with a Dissent Off-Road modular bumper on? Well, stick around to the end of the video to find out. If you're already a subscriber, thank you so much. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing, and if you do, leave me a comment below. Last installment of the series where I have built the entire bumper from start to finish. We will be installing the swing outs onto the base bumper, and finally we will do the big reveal. Okay, so what we need to do is start assembling the latching mechanism. So we're going to take the handle, we're going to take the spindle for the handle. It comes with two sets of bushings, one on either side. Obviously, they're going to fit right here. Then a couple of nylon washers, and these are going to be inserted on top of the bushing. So the way this goes, we put the bushing right there. The nylon washer will come on top, and then the spindle will come through the top of the swing out, and it will receive a stainless steel washer. So it's going to get a little complicated to go and fish that and hold the washer. So I'm going to do this off camera, but basically you have the two bushings like this, the two washers on either side, and then the bolt, and then this is stainless steel, so I'm going to put a little anti-seize. I use this little Q-tips to put anti-seize on the bolt, so this way it doesn't get everywhere. This thing is a nightmare. Once you have it, especially on the black powder coating, you can't wipe it off. It does wipe off with WD-40, gets right through it, but just use a little Q-tip. You don't need much, but as with all the captured nuts inside the bumper or on the chassis, anytime you have a stainless steel on stainless steel, Ben says put some anti-seize. So I'm going to go ahead and install this handle here, and then I'll catch you immediately after that. Okay, so when we've done this, I'm going to go ahead and tighten it. This is 1/2 inch, so we're going to grab our 1/2 inch socket right there, and then we're going to grab our 1/2 inch 3/8 1/2 inch right here. You want this to be tight, but still move, so you don't go crazy. You want it to have basically no play, but you don't need to bind it so much that this thing doesn't move. Tight. I'm gonna go a little bit more. Perfect. No play whatsoever. Loose. Everything is fine. All right, putting that back in. Okay, so next we're going to turn our attention to the counterpart of the striker plate. I'm going to call this the striker plate bushing, if you want. And so we're going to take the bolts out. Okay, and as I was telling you, this is actually a 5/32 Allen wrench on this side. Right here, and I believe 11. So we're gonna grab our 11 for the other side. Yep. Okay. So we're gonna put the plate in, like this. So it goes underneath. You insert it from underneath the swing out. Again, this is the plate where the swing out is gonna rest onto the striker plate, taking some of the weight off the swing out itself when it's in the closed position. Now on top of that, you have the spring retention bracket, so it goes on top. Then you have the couple of stainless steel washers. You put them on. Again, I'm going to go and put a little dab of anti-seize on these right there. I'm going to grab these washers, these bolts, sorry. Get them started. They are Nylock bolts, so they'll stay tight after you put them in place and tighten them real well. Okay, gonna do that. All right, grab this. Again, 5/32 Allen wrench. Yeah. All right, bring this close. You want to make sure that that bushing is flush with the edge of the swing out. So when it strikes against the striker plate, it's clean. It makes a clean entry onto the bumper. All right. I'm not going crazy with the torque. Just want to make sure it's there. Since they are nylock washers, they won't move once they're torqued. All right. So we got that done. And now we can put the spring in tension. So I'm going to go and insert the spring between that bracket and the edge of the latch itself. The spring is a little tight here, so I've grabbed the little pliers. Going to open that up a little bit. There you go. And it's going to go toward the handle. Open it up a little bit. Oops. It's gonna get under tension, so it's not coming back out and opening. There we go. Whoops, one more time. There you go. And so the latch, when it's working, basically will be like this and will help the striker come back. So the next thing we have to do is actually move the put the striker itself, the latching mechanism. It comes with couple of washers, 3 washers for adjustment. I start with 2 washers on the on top of that little plastic bushing right here. I'm going to put 2 washers, and that's just, it's going to adjust how much tension you put onto the latch mechanism itself and the striker plate. And this is going to go right here. I'm going to put that other washer on top, a little bit of anti-seize on top of that bolt right there. And then this is a nylock washer, and so I'm going to install that right here, right there. So I believe this is a 13, and basically it stays like this, okay? So it just releases. I'm going to grab, this is an Allen, however, this is not the same. Hey buddy. All right, let me see. I believe here we have a, if I remember, it's 316. Yes. So we have a 316 on this side, Allen wrench, and we have a 13 on this side. There. Okay. Put that back. Put that back. 11. Where's my 11? Right here. Okay. All right, guys. So we're good with the latching mechanism, the handle. Okay. Now we're going to turn our attention to the spindle and the bearings and all of that good stuff. So now what we have to do is remove the spindle, and we're going to pack the bearings, put the bearing seal covers on, reinstall the spindle, and we'll be good to go put it on the trunk. All right, so remove the spindle, remove that big nut. Okay. So remember, the spindle goes from the top of the swing out down it's easy to remember. If you have powder coated, then the black portion of the spindle goes to the top, because this is what you see. Okay, take the bracket out. You'll have the two bearing spacers that sit on there, and you have bearing 1 and bearing 2. They're the same on both sides, and the two spacers. Now remember, you have to remember how to put this correctly. That little notch is at the top of the swing out. Okay, so what we need to do here is you have the bearing races which receive the bearing, okay? And what we need to do is we're going to grease these, put some grease on both sides, be liberal with the grease. I'm using a high temperature grease. It's probably not necessary, however, it is a very good grease. And then also we're going to pack these bearings by hand. And what that means is actually get in there with the finger and just really fill that bearing with grease as much as we can prior to installing it into the swing out. Even though there are two grease ports that we'll use after the fact when the whole assembly is on the truck, that's what the last thing that we'll do is push some new grease into both of these ports on both of the swing outs, just to make sure that it's full pack of grease. That will do two things. Obviously help with the activation of the swing out, but it'll also prevent any sort of debris to entering the swing out and the spindle mechanism. So we're going to pack those bearings, and then once you pack them, what you're going to do is do the very delicate part, as I mentioned before, of inserting those bearing seal covers. As I said, I can see that there is actually some powder coating residues that have residue that is right there on the inside of the swing out, the spindle housing. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get a little bit of sandpaper, and I'm going to make sure that I go around all of this surface to make sure that all of the residue of that powder coating process is out, because the tolerance to put this seal cover on is really, really, really tight. And as I said, once you go ahead and start pressing that seal cover, that bearing cover on, you want to make sure that it is going perfectly even, so you don't end up damaging the actual seal, the bearing seal cover. This is a very sort of intricate process. I did that yesterday. I messed one up a little bit. I was able to recover, but you absolutely want to make sure you take your time to do this. And I will do that off camera. But as I said, I will put a piece of 2x6 on the ground. I will put this on, make sure it's actually perfectly level. And then I will get my big socket and I will start to tap gently all the way around, pressing that seal cover on into the housing. Okay, so in order to pack the bearing, well, you just get dirty, you get your glove, sometimes I don't use glove, but it gets a mess to pack the bearing, so we're going to do that the right way with the gloves. Super simple. Get in there, get some grease, and just pack your bearings. Okay, so you really want to make sure that you put a lot of grease in there. You put it all the way around and work it into the bearing to where it's everywhere. Okay, so both of my bearings have been packed. I'm going to go ahead and clean up the edge of both sides of the spindle housing, just to make sure that I remove all the leftover from the powder coating. And then what I will do is I will proceed with one bearing at a time. Obviously, I'm going to put some grease. I'm going to put some grease on the bearing race, put the bearing on top, place the swing out, and I will show you on a 2x6, and then gently tap with the big socket on top of it to push the bearing seal cover onto the whole assembly. Okay, so let's clean those both sides of the spindle housing. We're going to grab a little sandpaper, and what I'm going, I had a little piece already cut out from yesterday. Put that back. All right, and all you do basically, I have covered the bearing so no contaminant can fall into the bearings. Clean that up like such. I'm gonna put my glasses because I need them when I do this kind of thing. And so right now what you're gonna do is just grab this and go around the whole spindle housing and make sure you remove all the residue from the powder coating process. You want to make sure that this is absolutely as smooth as it can get without adding any thickness, because as I said, the tolerance between the bearing seal cover and the opening of the spindle housing is really, really, really tight. Make sure you don't scuff the bearing race. So just take your time and just work your way around the whole thing on both sides. I've cleaned both sides of the spindle housing of all the residue from the powder coating. I'm going to go ahead and grab a little bit of alcohol and just clean up the inside of it, just to make sure that it's clean to receive the grease. We don't want any sort of particles, dust, and powder coating to be in there. So I'm going to do that, sort of clean all of that up like such. And I can feel that everything is super, super smooth now, so that's going to help pressing the dust seal, the bearing dust seal onto the spindle housing. So got that done. I'm going to grab a 2x6 real quick, a little piece. I'm not going to do that on the table, obviously. I will put that down before I do it, but essentially this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to place the swing out like this on the ground. I'm going to put a towel underneath so it doesn't get scuffed up because, well, it's brand new. I'm going to pack the bearing race with grease. I'm going to take one of my bearings, I'm going to drop it in. I'm going to take this seal cover, the bearing seal cover, and then I'm going to take my time and I'm going to start it as evenly as possible. I'm going to grab my big socket and I'm just going to start hammering very gently, going all the way around as evenly as possible. And when I feel, or when I can see that it's starting to get inside the spindle housing, I want to make sure that I try to tap all the way around and keep it going down as evenly as possible. The most important part, guys, is how you get started. You don't want to get started unevenly, or else you run the risk of that seal to sort of bind and on the edge of the spindle housing, and it will destroy it. And then trust me, it's a nightmare. You have to gently tap it, trying to make it round again and press it in. So please, please take your time when you do this. So I'm going to do this off camera and then I'll be right back. So before I get started, what I forgot to tell you, what I like to do is I'm going to get some more grease and I'm going to pre-pack basically the seal cover. That cavity that exists here under the bearing cover, basically of this seal, when you put the Zert insert and you pump grease, it basically gets packed with grease. And once you install the bearing spacer, it's tight and the grease stays here. It makes sure that all the grease gets packed tight inside the seal and inside, then pushed down toward the bearing. I like to pre-pack these. Makes it easier afterward to do the final assembly. So this is what I'm doing. And then I'm going to assemble this. I lost some of the footage of the reassembly of the spindle and the bracket, but essentially what you have to be careful of is how the bracket is positioned. I mentioned that earlier in the video. And you have to make sure that you insert the bearing spacers on either side, then the spindle and the nut, and you're basically good to go. I am very sorry I lost the footage, but these things happen. Let's continue on. I can't believe we have reached the home stretch. all we have to do is put that second swing out on this side of the bumper, and then put in the tire carrier on one side, the jerry can holder on the other swing out, and we will be finished with the complete assembly of the Dissent Off-Road rear modular bumper for the Landcruiser 100 series. I have to say it's been a challenge to learn the YouTube video tricks at the same time as installing the bumper. I don't know if you know, but this is the beginning of my channel, so I have not done anything other than filming for this bumper. So this is the last little bit that we have to do before we put the accessories on those swing outs. This swing out has to go, and the bracket here has to be attached to the back of this base bumper. So Ben said every time there is a captured nut, you need to put some NTCs. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then after that, it's just a matter of presenting the bracket to the bumper and go out and putting those M12 bolts, which you use a 16 millimeter socket to tighten them, and then putting them here and then tightening everything. Ben says that all the hardware, M14 and M12, we can torque at 95 foot-pound. I definitely did 95 foot-pound of torque on all the M14 and M12s that are on the base bumper. However, for these, probably 80 is plenty. This thing is solid, it's not going to go anywhere. So we're going to get going. Again, I'm using my little tool here not to put NTCs everywhere. So I'm just, going in there and then applying some NTCs with this little fancy Q-tip right there, just like this. All right, so now that we have that done, we can go ahead and present the swing out. We're done with the NTCs. What we're going to do now is present the swing out to the bumper and start securing it. We grab this. That nut falls into its recessed cutout out of the bumper, and then you take the M12 and you start lining them up with the proper captured nuts, and you tighten it. I'm going to finish this off camera because nobody needs to see me tightening full bolts. You have somewhat limited room to get access to put a socket in there, so if you can, try to bring the bolts as close as possible to the bracket so you can slide a socket there. You do these two, and then you flip it around and you do these two. So I will do that now. So as you bring these bolts closer by hand, just make sure evidently that they are not cross-threaded, and if you feel like it's a little tight, you can always chase the threads with the proper tap. Mine, I have done that already, so they're pretty tight. So now I'm ready to finish torquing these bolts onto the for that bracket. That right here, particularly on this spot, the room is kind of limited. So unfortunately, to bring these bolts together, I don't have an open end ratchet. So I'm just going to bring them closer with the wrench, with the open wrench like this, and then after that I should be able to fit a socket. So here I'm almost there. If you had a super shallow 16 millimeter socket, that would definitely help. You could probably also put a joint articulation on this socket to give you a little bit of to make it a little bit easier on you, but I don't have that, so I'm just bringing up the bolts together closer until my socket is finally gonna go over and I'll be able to torque that. Yeah, there you go. So now I can put my wrench and torque that up. These bolts are closer together. I'm torquing them. I'm putting 80 foot-pound of torque. There you go. Now that the swing out is firmly onto the base bumper, we can turn our attention to a few little things that we still have to do around the swing out. Number one is putting those little Zert grease ports on the back of the spindle housing. These are 8mm to tighten them. So you don't need to tighten them very much. You just bring them close and then give them a couple of turns. You definitely don't want to cross thread them, and that's basically all that's needed from this. And there you go. So these are installed. Just so you know, I had put some NTCs on the threads. So this is now ready, and we'll be able to grease the bearings directly without removing it from the bracket or from the bumper. Now we're done with this, we're going to install the gas shocks here. As I was saying, this is a 150-pound gas shock, so you're not going to be able to compress it by hand. However, I can tell you, because I've already done the other swing out, they are fantastic at swinging the swing out. So we're going to put them. We have to go ahead and install that little ball joint. It's a nylock nut on the other side, and as I told you, we're going to put it on the first position in the swing out. Okay, but we're not going to tighten it securely until we have had enough slack to actually fit the gas shock. So right now I'm just putting it just loose like this, and I'm going to go get the gas shock. So now we're going to turn our attention and put in the gas strut in place. It attaches on one side to the ball joint, and then the other one here on the swing out. You put it in the first position, the closest to the tailgate. And when I installed this ball joint, I left it loose in order for it to be easier to install. You have to remove, there is a little clip. There's a little clip around the socket right here that you have to pop, and then you have a little pin that comes out from underneath the ball right here. So that pin goes in right here, and then you flip it around to lock the ball joint inside the socket. I've gone ahead and put some grease in both of these sockets to keep everything loose and properly lubricated. This is going to be exposed obviously to a fair amount of moisture being behind the car, and so we want to make sure that this stays lubricated. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put these on right like such, and then put that pin back on, lock it in place, and then because we've left this one loose, we have actually plenty of wiggle room to put it into the bumper. I mean into the swing out. Hey Roscoe, say hi, say hi. This is my dog, my shop dog, my companion, my co-pilot, the adventurer, the four-legged adventurer. Oh, you're a good dog. You're a good dog. You here to help your daddy? All right, let's get this done. So you insert that little pin inside the ball joint. I hope you can see. I'm gonna bring you closer. Right there. Right, so you insert that pin right there inside the ball, inside the socket, and then you put the clip back over it, and that secures it. And you do that on both sides. All right. So here we go. So now I'm going to actually grab my little needle nose pliers, grab the other clip, pop it out, put that gas strut on there, pop it in place. There you go. And then put that pin back in the little hole, twist it over, and now that strut is firmly attached. So now what we need to do is we're going to grab the proper wrench. I believe it's 13. So I'm going to go ahead and get that wrench. And you tighten the ball joint right there. Make sure it's nice and tight right there. And that completes this part of the project. All right, so now that the gas strut is in place, we need to install these little bump stop. One of it will come in the front and will actually create some preload in order for the swing out to latch itself and be secure into the strike plate. And the other one, the other bump stop, well, this is 150 pounds. This has a lot of power to it. And the other one will come on this side and will obviously prevent the swing out from completely reaching the end of the bumper, and will stop it at an angle and prevent it from actually exerting some force on the bracket itself, and more likely on the gas strut. So those bump stops come in two different sizes, a skinny one and a fatter one, and Ben has also included a number of shims. I believe we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shims. So what those shims are used for is to increase or decrease the amount of preload on the internal bump stop for the latching mechanism. So I did the first one on this side, and you want to use the fatter bump stop on the inside and the skinnier one on the outside. I thought that when I did it, it had plenty. I'm gonna go check real quick on this one. I put the skinny one on the inside, and I put three spacers. And I remember now, when I did it yesterday, I thought that putting the big bump stop on the inside had a lot of preload, almost unbearable to go and push the swing out closed. So I decided to put the skinny one on the inside. However, I put 3 spacers on it. So the way you do it is you take it like this. It's a little cumbersome to hold that nut behind it, but you put a little bit of, you guessed it, a little bit of anti-seize on that nut. I'm sorry, on the thread. Right there. And then you shimmy your hand in there. You can see the nut right there. And then you tighten the bump stop. After you're satisfied with the amount of preload and everything works correctly, you can go ahead and grab a wrench and grab that nut and just really torque down on the bump stop. I haven't decided, but I may put a lock washer behind this. It doesn't come with one, but this is one of the situation where I would feel a little bit more comfortable if I knew that this nut was very secured. And it's not a nylon nut, so there is a possibility that this will come loose. It's not very easy to put a wrench in this particular area unless you have, I guess, an articulated close end wrench, which would be nice. I don't, but so I may just kind of grab it with a pair of pliers or something, and then put a stop washer behind that. Okay, so when you have this done, I'm grabbing the 2 remaining washers, and I'm going to do the same thing for the outer bump stop. Now you have to keep the gas strut from activating, so I put my leg here, and then this is even more awkward to go put that into this position. I'm going to go ahead and put a little anti-seize on that thread there. Then you grab the nut. Again, I may end up putting a lock washer on there. I'm not doing it right now. I don't want to see how this comes together first, and then you do the same thing. You grab the thread and you put the bump stop, and you bring it close, as close as you can by hand. Evidently, with just your finger like this, the nut is going to skip inside. But so this is how it goes. So when you release the gas strut, it just comes and sits nicely against the outer edge of the bumper. It's a very, very good action. It's very smooth, and when you let it go, it's very, very smooth. So this is how it works when you are done. I'm going to take the grease off of this. Basically, and I hope you can see this, I'm going to bring you close. This is the strike plate. I've installed them yesterday or the day before, whenever I did the install of the base bumper. And then you have the plate, that little strike plate bushing or pad, I guess you call that. It has the bevel edge here, and when you bring it closer, what happens is it's going to basically climb onto the strike pad. So that does create a fair amount of pressure, but this is good because what it does is when it locks in place, it prevents the swing out from having the entire weight of the tire and the tire carrier rest on the spindle mechanism itself. Now you have a positive anchor point, so to speak, or a pad right here that takes some of the burden of supporting this entire structure. And then when you want to open, you push a little bit, release the mechanism, and it comes right back out. So again, very positive click. So you can see I have a little play here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple more washers, at least one washer on this side. What I've been told is you want really as little as possible in the terms of play right here. You want to make sure that this is really under load when you latch the mechanism, okay? But you also want to be able to push it in order to release the latching mechanism. So this is it. And then you open it, and it opens like this. It's really awesome. Really, really, really awesome. So we're done with the installation of the swing outs on the base bumper. All we have to do left is to, on this side, we're going to put the tire carrier, which is the driver's side, and then on the passenger side, we're going to put the jerry can holder. So we're going to do that now. All right, guys, we're pretty close now. So all we have to do is actually bringing the two accessories, the table, and the tire carrier and the table, and mount them onto the swing outs, and then we should be completed. So I'm going to move the truck forward a little bit to create a little bit more space here so we have more room to film. And we're going to get started on putting the tire carrier is going to go on the driver's side, and the jerry can holder is going to go on the passenger side. Real quickly, you can see that there's two additional little brackets here that have been installed on the on this swing out. This will receive the license plate, okay? Because the license plate gets ends up being behind these two accessories, and it's no longer visible. So from a legal standpoint, Ben supplied a relocation bracket system, including a lighting system for that relocation of the license plate. And I will show you the LED light fixture that's supposed to go here when we get to that point. But right now I'm going to move the truck forward and we're going to continue on. All right, guys, so now what we're going to do is we're going to present the jerry can holder onto the swing out and attach it securely. In order to do so, we have M14 bolts right here, 10.8 or 10.9 grade. I don't exactly remember which one it is, but they're zinc plated, extremely good quality. I believe that's the highest quality. That's automotive grade quality. And we have a couple of washers and then the nut. These will get torqued at up to 95 foot-pound. I think I'm going to put 80 foot-pound, and I believe that at 80 foot-pound, those are not coming back out at all, ever. So all we have to do now is grab that jerry can right here and jerry can holder accessories. Whoops. And we're gonna go ahead, present it to the swing out, put it in place over these brackets, and then you have one bolt here, one here, and then you have two more bolts on either side right here on the side. So let's grab this right there. Then you want to present it like this. Fit it in place, and then it goes over the brackets right here like such. Grab the first bolt. I'm going with the bolts. I'm going outside in, so the head of the bolt is always on the outside, facing you, if you will, and the nut is always facing the tailgate. I think visually, since all the hardware has been installed like this, it's a lot better. So I'm going to do this and then bring all these bolts close and tighten them and then torque them off camera, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so we're going to torque these bolts now, and they're each going to get 80 foot-pound of torque. There you have it, guys. The jerry can holder is now on the swing out, and I think that what I need to do is demonstrate for you how cool the mechanism really is, from the latching to the opening with the gas strut. It's extremely cool. It's very elegant the way the latch is done, the way the handle is done, and the mechanism is absolutely superbly well engineered. So you push a little bit to add a little preload and release the handle. So the pad is still resting on the strike plate at this point. You open it and then you let go. Voila. It's rock solid. I mean, absolutely super smooth. So, and then when you need to close it, you bring the swing out. You put a little bit of pressure for that pad to just climb onto the strike plate, and you lock it, and you're done. This is it. So now that we're done with this side, let's put the tire carrier on quickly. So I wanted to make a little complimentary video because I lost some footage when I installed the bumper, and I could not show you the installation of that tire carrier bracket onto the truck. But essentially the way you attach it is exactly the same way as you attach it on the bracket for the jerry can holder. Two bolts here, one bolt here. Those are going to be M14, and then you put the carrier on. Now what I want to bring your attention to is the actual assembly of the tire carrier cross member. As you remember, when we installed this, it comes with a fair amount of adjustments. You can adjust the member fore and aft, as well as increasing or decreasing the amount of tilt that you have. What you want to do, and obviously the fore and aft position is going to greatly depend on the actual tire that you're putting in the back. Currently I'm just running my 16 with street tires, but when I put the off-road tires on, they may get thicker, and so I'll have to move that. But in order to move it, it's no big deal. You loosen these two bolts, not this one. This one is just here to kind of maintain the part in place as you tilt it. You loosen these two bolts, and then that piece is going to move fore and aft as well as tilt, and so you'll be able to adjust everything as as you want. And then once you have the correct angle that you want it, you then put the lug nuts onto the wheel and then tighten it. I have it kind of tight, but not too tight against the tire carrier, because I have the high lift jack. And with the high lift jack, that part ends up being really tight against the back of your tire. And so if you push the tire carrier back too much, then you end up not having enough room, and then you can't put the lug nuts. So you're gonna have to play with that quite a bit. But I ended up putting a stool right here, put my tire on, close. Actually, what I did is I closed the stand, and then I presented the wheel, and then I had a stool right here that kept the wheel on, and then I played with the angle until I was happy with the way it was. And then I torqued the hell out of these. I'm concerned that there is no spacers in between this in between the two inside the wall, basically, of this cross member. You have to put a lot of torque in order to keep that in the position that you put it on. And I'm concerned that over time you may end up sort of crushing this, even though that's really thick. I think it would be better if it was provided a spacer to go from, the inside to this bar to the other side. So I may take a measurement and go to the hardware store and get an aluminum spacer to go in between, or even steel. So when I torque everything together, I have something very secure to go against. But so far I've driven about 100 and something miles with the tire at this angle, and even though some people have said, yeah, my tire keeps moving down, this hasn't moved down at all whatsoever. And the streets of New Orleans are very extremely bumpy. So this is the tire carrier quickly. So I wanted to make a little complimentary video, because I lost some footage when I installed the bumper, and I could not show you the installation of that tire carrier bracket onto the truck. But essentially the way you attach it is exactly the same way as you attach it on the bracket for the jerry can holder. 2 bolts here, 1 bolt here. Those are going to be M14, and then you put the carrier on. Now what I want to bring your attention to is the actual assembly of the tire carrier cross member. As you remember, when we installed this, it comes with a fair amount of adjustments. You can adjust the member fore and aft, as well as increasing or decreasing the amount of tilt that you have. What you want to do, and obviously the fore and aft position is going to greatly depend on the actual tire that you're putting in the back. Currently I'm just running my 16 with street tires, but when I put the off-road tires on, they may get thicker, and so I'll have to move that. But in order to move it, it's no big deal. You loosen these 2 bolts, not this one. This one is just here to kind of maintain the part in place as you tilt it. You loosen these 2 bolts, and then that piece is going to move fore and aft as well as tilt, and so you'll be able to adjust everything as you want. And then once you have the correct angle that you want it, you then put the lug nuts onto the wheel and then tighten it. I have it kind of tight, but not too tight against the tire carrier, because I have the high lift jack. And with the high lift jack, that part ends up being really tight against the back of your tire. And so if you push the tire carrier back too much, then you end up not having enough room, and then you can't put the lug nuts. So you're gonna have to play with that quite a bit. But I ended up putting a stool right here, put my tire on, close. Actually, what I did is I closed the stand, and then I presented the wheel, and then I had a stool right here that kept the wheel on, and then I played with the angle until I was happy with the way it was. And then I torqued the hell out of these. I'm concerned that there is no spacers in between this, in between the two, inside the wall basically of this cross member. You have to put a lot of torque in order to keep that in the position that you put it on. And I'm concerned that over time you may end up sort of crushing this, even though that's really thick. I think it would be better if it was provided a spacer to go from, you know, the inside to this bar to the other side. So I may take a measurement and go to the hardware store and get an aluminum spacer to go in between, or even steel. So when I torque everything together, I have something very secure to go against. But so far I've driven about 100 and something miles with the tire at this angle, and even though some people have said, yeah, my tire keeps moving down, this hasn't moved down at all whatsoever. And the streets of New Orleans are very extremely bumpy. So this is the tire carrier. Guys, I wanted to bring you a little closer to the tire carrier, but in particular I wanted to show you the adjustability of the high lift mount. I don't know if you can see this, but it has its own set of adjustment right here. So it will swing in and out, sort of. You can orient it, right? And that's important because depending on the angle of your tire on the tire carrier, that high leaf jack mount bracket needs to be also adjusted so the angle right here is appropriate to clear the head of the high lift jack itself. So I just realized that I had everything tied together, pretty much torqued, and I realized that my bracket was like this, which clearly isn't going to work. So I did a little fidgeting, and then I realized that it has grooves right here, and you can adjust that. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go grab my high lift jack just to make sure that it fits right here. And then when I have everything perfectly situated, I'm going to torque everything. So I'm going to clean that up, make sure everything is tight, change my license plate, put it in the new position, which is underneath the jerry can carrier. And okay, I just switched the bump stop and put the thicker bump stop on the inside of that swing out where the tire carrier is, and it is a lot better, a lot more preload on that. It takes a lot of effort to actually go and release the mechanism, so it's good. It's not something that you want it to be easy to open. You want to really have a meaningful action when you go open that up. But so here it is. So as I said, I'm going to clean everything up, put my license plate where it belongs, and then we will do the big reveal. Guys, this is it. This is the moment that we've been waiting for, that I've been waiting for, and thanks again for coming along this journey of building and assembling and putting together the Dissent Off-Road modular bumper for the Landcruiser 100 series. This is the final product.